Hello, I am so happy that you're joining me here today. Today I wanted to talk about depression. The reason that I wanted to talk about depression is A, because I see it a lot in my clinical practice. B, because it might be more common than what you think. Maybe you are suffering from depression, or someone that you love might be suffering from depression. And many times we don't really know what to do with it. So according to the World Health Organization, 300 million people suffer from depression. So it's important for us to learn about what it is and what the different treatments are. Depression not only has an impact on ourselves, on our physical well-being, on our mental, like our cognitive abilities, our emotional, but they also impact our relationships with our partners, relationships with our kids, and with friends, family in general. In previous videos, I talked about how we get stuck in these negative cycles in relationships. And I also talked about how there's a part of that has to do with us, right? And how we relate with one another. There's another part that has to do with what happens inside of each one of us. And depression can be one aspect that exacerbates the cycle, and vice versa. The cycle can be exacerbating the depression, right? So, very briefly, how do we know? What do we mean when we're talking about depression? Well, according to the DSM, which is kind of the psychiatric book, if someone is suffering from, I'm going to mention the symptoms really quickly. I'm not going to go through them all, but just in big chunks. But if someone is suffering from these symptoms for at least 2 weeks, almost every day, then it is, you can talk about depression, which is different from just, I'm feeling sad, which I can be sad one day and then I can be okay. But this is more of an affective state. So as I was mentioning, depression has an impact on different levels. It has an impact on our bodies. It impacts our sleep patterns. Maybe we are too sleepy. We want to sleep all day. If we could, we would, or we do. Or we can't sleep, right? We have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. It impacts our appetite. We might be either eating too much or wanting to eat and craving food all the time, or the other way around. We just don't want to eat. We've lost our appetite completely. It has an impact on our cognitive abilities. It's difficult to concentrate. It's difficult, our memory. We don't remember things. It's hard for us to pay attention. We have a hard time recalling things. And obviously we're slower. It impacts our stamina. We feel fatigued. It impacts how we feel about ourselves. We feel we are very self-critical. We are very judgmental with ourselves. We feel guilty easily. We feel irritable. So it's really, we get triggered easily. So when we're talking about relationships and kind of going to that place where it's easy to fight, well, we can go there very easily because we are oversensitive. And it also has an impact on how we relate with others. We feel numb. We feel like, we've lost our energy. We don't want to be around people. We don't enjoy things as much as we did. We don't enjoy being with people. We just, we don't care how we, about ourselves. We stop caring about our hygiene, what we eat. So all these, symptoms that form part of what would be a depressive state obviously have an impact on how you will and how you are connecting with others. What kinds of things you receive. When we are feeling bad with ourselves, we are more sensitive to any message that comes from outside. That means they don't care about me. I'm not important to them. So those interpretations of the world obviously are more, we are hypersensitive to them. So what to do? So I have many people that ask, okay, so what do I do? Do I medicate? Is that a good alternative? What does depression mean? I am particularly not a huge fan of medication, and the reason is that depression is a way that our body has to let us know that there is something deeper inside of us that we have not dealt with. So whenever we usually don't know what to do with intense emotions, right? What do I do with my sadness? What do I do with my hurt? What do I do when I feel rejected? What do I do when I don't feel important, right? Many times when we feel that pain, we shove it inside. We distract ourselves in many ways, right? Because we really don't know what to do with it. So we try not to feel it. So that is how, with time, there are issues, there are traumas, I'm going to call them, right? That are experiences that involve very intense emotions that we have not really dealt with. In another video, I'm going to talk about what dealing with traumatic experiences really is, right? But what happens when we haven't dealt with them, it's when we've either swallowed them, and pushed them aside. Like, okay, maybe if I don't see it, it doesn't exist, right? Sometimes it is kind of remembering and thinking about it all the time. And the way that you know that you haven't processed an experience is when your story hasn't changed, when it's the same thing, right? It's the same thing, and you go through it, it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed how you feel towards it. It hasn't changed how the meaning that it has to you, and the story itself has not changed. That means you haven't processed it. So, there are all these experiences from our past that we haven't really dealt with. So it's like having wounds, right? And then we just, patch them or ignore them, right? And we keep on going. And then maybe, there will be another time when that little wound might be touched, and it might, get hurt again. But again, we're going to ignore that. So depression, right, is a way of your body telling you, hey, there is something here that you definitely need to pay attention to, right? You haven't dealt with pain. You've pushed it away. You've ignored it. You've haven't really worked through it. So if we medicate, right, we might be alleviating some symptoms, but we're not really solving the problem, right? Because the problem is deeper. So what do we do? So A, it is very important to recognize what this is about, right? So is it about me feeling not important? Is it about me feeling powerless? Is it about me feeling lonely? Whatever that is. And then figuring out, where does that come from? What about my experiences in the past, that have led me to, in a way, it's a truth that we have about ourselves, right? To believe this. I'm not important. Even though a part of me says, no, I am, and that's part of why I'm sad, right? Because I am important, but I'm not. Because people don't pay attention to me, or people, and I always end up in these relationships where, I'm either deceived or things happen to me, right? Okay, so what about us in that, right? So, A is exploring that. Now, while we do that, it's important that we start treating ourselves in a different way. And that we start helping ourselves, right, physically. That we take care of ourselves. So there comes a point where we need to push ourselves a little, right, and say, okay, while I explore this, what can I do? What can I do to start feeling better? So, when we are feeling depressed, it's like a little negative cycle that starts going on in our brains, right, in our minds. So, for example, there is this experience that makes me feel that nobody cares about my feelings, right? And then when I feel that, what will I do, right? Oh, and I can remember this other time when my feelings weren't taken into account. So without us, realizing, what we're doing is we're bringing up other experiences that are validating this. I'm not important to anyone. And then now I'm feeling even sadder. And then the sadder I feel, the more I'm yes, because I'm not, but definitely not important. Oh, and remember this other time? And there we go, right? So we start this negative cycle. That's just making, the worse we feel, the more we remind ourselves that how not important or how not good enough we are or how much we have failed. And then we feel worse and then we go back. We do that. So it's this kind of a negativity cycle that happens within us. So, to start, like I always say, awareness. We have to be aware that this is what we're doing. We have to recognize and see what is underlying, what's happening. And 3, we have to start taking care of ourselves. How do you start taking care of yourself? Well, exercising, eating well, eating regularly, being very purposeful in all these aspects. There's a lot of research done about how, for example, exercise, right, has to do with our hormones that are feel-good hormones. So when you exercise, you actually feel better, right? There's a lot of research also showing how when you eat healthy, right, you feel better, right? So all these things that can help your body, even if you just think about the chemistry aspect, right? Chemically, you will feel better, right? They are kind of our natural antidepressant. And as you start taking care of yourself, right? Take some time for yourself. Take some time to pamper yourself. Take some time to take care of yourself. And as you're starting to do that, just recognize what it's like for you to take care of yourself. Right? And maybe slowly we can start changing and shifting, right? So it's not always a negative, and when we are there, it is always a never, right? We like to talk about it, and our mind kind of thinks about that. But we can recognize right now, right here, right? I can feel good, and I can take care of myself. So that's where we can start, and then go in deeper, right? Start connecting with all these other things that we have neglected. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you next time when we will talk about painful, traumatic experiences and how they affect us and how we can deal with them in a better way. I look forward to seeing you soon. Until then.